And that's me, alive and well on KAPH, or as the owl said to the pussycat, whoo, whoo. If that's any indication of what my show's like.
Hello, and welcome to the Twilight Pwn, the internet's third most popular Twilight Zone podcast. My name is John, and I am joined by my co-DJ, Fred.
Hey,
Fred, how you doing in the booth?
I'm doing swell. Oh, man.
Oh, man. It has been a long time.
I know.
I feel like that's mainly on my shoulders. I apologize, but it's good to be back in the booth with you. How you doing?
I'm doing well. We were actually going to do this last week, but I got sort of a confusing text. Was it you said my nuns and some sort of party involving a nun? What?
I guess my aunt-in-law, my wife's aunt is a nun who was a principal for a school who is retiring. She also recently had her 80th birthday, so they had a kind of a Mr. Holland's Opus extravaganza retirement bash for her that went quite late for
for a nun's retirement.
For an 80-year-old nun. Yeah. So they closed that down.
That's really funny. I assumed it was an autocorrect goof because you're like, I don't think I can make the session. My nun aunt is, and I'm like, okay, you just mean my fun aunt or something like that. Nope. I like the
accurate.
Nun-in-law is that's a romantic comedy that should be made 100%.
Exactly.
Maybe starring the Coreys, starring Corey Haim and Corey Feldman.
Yeah, listeners, you're going to be very disappointed to know we had an off-mic conversation about Dream a Little Dream, the 1989 Corey's classic. But
what's kind of funny,
maybe sometime in the next couple years we'll get to my deeper thoughts on that. My fave.
Well, it was funny because you were saying, like, I like it sort of ironically, sort of not ironically, and then you kind of started to give me a pitch that I imagine you've given to many, many people over the years. You were like, it's actually more interestingly made a film than you'd expect for a Corey's movie. But we didn't get any farther than that. Do you have what's the next line of the pitch?
I mean, I will own it. It's there. I recognize it's an 80s Corey's movie, but I do really enjoy it unironically. It is. And even worse than an 80s Corey's movie, it is part of that, like, 2-year span where there was a mad rush of body swap comedies.
Ah, yes.
It is a body swap movie. But it's like, when you watch, like, Father Like Son or vice versa, and then you watch Dream a Little Dream, they're doing very different things. Dream a Little Dream was made by, a music video director who was trying to be avant-garde and weird. And
I'm sorry I asked. Let's get down.
In 6 months when we record our next cast, if we just want to talk about Dream a Little Dream, I'm down.
Okay, all right, let's do it. But we got a lot to get through tonight. After our seemingly endless hiatus, we thought we'd grab some low hanging fruit in the form of what are we doing tonight, Johnny?
So we are discussing an episode of Night Gallery, Rod Serling's second foray into the anthology series. This is going to be the third episode of the second season, which originally aired on September 29th, 1971. Now, before I launch into Serling's intro, I don't know if it might be wise if we want to maybe take a radical step of discussing them out of order, because, what with the intro we've already played and what with my Serling style. Is your Serling style intro geared towards... and listeners, this is something that maybe you're already aware of. There are multiple stories in a Night Gallery episode, so we're going to tackle them all. But Fred, which one do you think we should stick chronologically, or what do you think we should do? Because I feel like I might need to keep my Serling intro in my pocket for later if we're going to wait. I don't know.
Well, my Serling intro is unfortunately geared towards the first one. Like the
why don't we just tease the audience? We'll just do it chronologically. You can do yours for the first one, and then I'll have one for the next one. When we get to it an hour or two from now. First, we'll discuss the first segment of this episode, Since Aunt Ada Came to Stay.
For those of you who've never met me, you might call me the undernourished Alfred Hitchcock. The great British craftsman and I do share something in common. An interest in the oddball. A predilection toward the bizarre. And this place is nothing if it isn't bizarre, by virtue of the paintings you see hanging around me. This item here is called Since Aunt Ada Came to Stay. And Aunt Ada is a most memorable character. You may not like her, but I seriously doubt if you'll ever forget her. Be thankful you've met her only in the Night Gallery.
That Hitchcock comment, is that him trying to be like, humbly understated, or is that just a fat joke?
Yeah, I don't know. It's definitely quite the drag. Like it's you kind of don't think of like him and Alfred Hitchcock really existing in the same space. But if you go back in time, like with Alfred Hitchcock's Presents show, you could imagine there being sort of like an anthology host feud, sort of like Letterman and Leno style. So maybe
Twilight Highlight Zone.
Yeah, exactly.
We know how it goes.
Yeah. So I don't know. It was a bit of a non sequitur, but I definitely enjoyed it. What did you think of the painting that they show? If you're not familiar, listeners, every episode of the Night Gallery has a corresponding painting that Serling is showing us as he does his intro. Did it strike any chords with you?
You know what? As I'm wont to do, I completely failed to register it, but I've got the file right here, so I'm going to pull it up right quick.
Okay.
And we'll get your...
That plays in well into my thought, which was just that the artist obviously did not watch the episode. It's like a gray face, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like, and maybe there's a broom there. It's like a witch face. Maybe well, that looks more like a frame than like a broom handle. Yeah. I don't know. It's creepy.
Yeah, it's all right.
It's not great.
It's all right. It's
not great. It's there.
It's there.
It's okay. A little spooky. It's a little spooky.
It's very, very little bit. So yeah, now is the time when we launch into our own Serling-style intros, and I've actually composed a new jingle for the occasion, which references the next, not this episode, but the next one. But we did play it for our intro clip. Let's just play it, and maybe it'll make more sense in about an hour.
Okay, great.
Who's better than Rod?
Serling intro. Serling intro. Serling intro. Serling intro. Oh yeah.
Now, did you actually record instrumentation for that, or is that just
the
episode? Because it seems a little slower than the actual episode.
I actually did record instrumentation for it. It was...
See, I didn't think you were going to... When I put the challenge to you, I thought because it just plays the clip over and over, you could, loop the instrumental part and then do some... But yeah, that's the extra level. That's a little bit extra love you come to expect from the Twilight Pwn in our jingles.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, recording episodes, not so much, but recording jingles, we have plenty of time for that. A lot of the fun of it is just, that like sort of funky 70s bass line that's just like a real like bass player's delight. That's just real. I just like knew I would have a lot of fun just like completely wanking around with that. So it definitely motivated me to keep going. But I will say we have to get our jingle Sean Tucson to do the lead vocals. I just kind of did it in a crunch. So that's really the rough version's behind the scenes look. But when we get
was that a drum machine or
it is, but like I had to program it.
I
didn't just
sounds good.
Cool.
No, it sounds good.
All right, so now that we're 20 minutes away from Serling reading his intro for this episode, I will read mine. For those of you who've never met me, you might call me the non-fat Alfred Hitchcock. Though the bloated Brit and I are quite different, especially our waistlines, we do share one thing in common. A love of Twinkies. I'm kidding, of course. I never touch the things, unlike someone I know. What we have in common is a love of the unusual. And tonight we present a tale that's even more unusual than old Hitch saying no to dessert. It involves an old lady who might be a witch, a professor of applied not-believing witchesology, and a very lovely young lady. The kind of girl who's completely out of reach for someone who doesn't take care of his body, like Alfred Hitchcock. Yep, read it and weep, Al Fat Busta Stitchcock. It's the Night Gallery.
So you're landing pretty squarely, and that was just a fat joke.
Yeah,
territory. Okay.
I think Serling kind of was, I think he was trying to get under.
There was no self-deprecation there.
No.
It was just a pretty good jab
Yes,
into the jelly jowls of Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, exactly. I was definitely proud of Al-Fat Bust-a-Stitchcock. Al-Fat writes itself, but Bust-a-Stitchcock took some
Yeah, you gotta work on
writing. Yeah, exactly. Well, I guess we're going to hold off on yours, so why don't we just...
listeners, please stay tuned.
Yes.
Or if you want, just skip an hour ahead and we'll get there.
Exactly, yeah. But we're going to be discussing, since Aunt Ada Came to Stay? And you can watch it on Hulu or on Dailymotion, which is probably not totally legal. But if you want to avoid it being spoiled, go check it out because we are certainly about to do that. So we open with the titular Aunt Ada. She's an old lady, and she's peering out of the window of sort of a suburban, sort of bucolic-looking B&B-esque house. And she's looking at a husband and wife having sort of cute husband and wife conversation as the husband gets into his car and drives off to his job as a college professor. And one thing I was sort of impressed by the filmmaking of this opening shot. It had like a lot of sort of, I don't want to say Scorsese, but like Scorsese's like little brother type of vibes, where there's like a lot of moving pieces. Did you enjoy that as well?
I mean, first there was like kind of, am I remembering it was kind of like tracking on the flower as it was moving through the thing, which kind of felt like Gladiator. And then there was just like lots of zooming and pulling focus. Like you could tell we were into like 70s just out of film school territory here.
Very much so, yeah. But it was one continuous shot. That's why I thought it was kind of cool.
No, this is good. It was good.
Yeah.
So,
the wife, whose name is Joanna, sort of playfully puts what I took to be a sprig of kale into her husband's buttonhole, and his name is Professor Craig, or his name is Craig, and he's a professor. And it was like, later on this sort of flower in the buttonhole becomes a major plot point, but I initially took it as kind of like 70s, husband and wife like filler. Has your wife ever like put like a flower in your buttonhole?
She knows better. She knows that I am not a big fan of, plant life in general. We've had early in our relationship, we had a lot of discussions about where plants can be in the home, and she would know better than to ever try and put one on my person.
Wait, I haven't heard this before. You're against plants? This is new to me.
Don't really like them. Not a big fan.
Don't like plants?
Not in my house.
I mean, they're fine in a zoo, but
I mean,
wait, you don't like? What does that even mean? You don't like plants? That's like I don't like
water.
water.
Deal with them. And I don't want them on my sheets. I don't really like them on my walls.
Okay.
I'm just not a plant guy.
Okay. And obviously you definitely don't want it in your buttonhole. So,
Lord, no. I don't even like the fact that you keep saying the word buttonhole.
I know, it does. It sounds vaguely sexual. What does she do? Like slip a Slim Jim in there?
Exactly.
Yeah, cool. Anyway, so the flower that she puts into his buttonhole, which now it does feel very dirty to say that, is a green carnation. So keep that in mind, listeners. So on his way out to his job as a professor, they discuss the old lady who we saw at the very beginning of the shot, Aunt Ada, who clearly the Professor Craig doesn't seem to like, and it's clearly the wife's aunt. And we follow the professor, and it's funny, in my notes I wrote, he gets buttonholed by a fellow whack. I don't know, just the word buttonhole just jumps out a lot.
Yeah, we're gonna lean into the word buttonhole in this podcast.
It's the two letters O and N are preventing it from being a much dirtier word. It's a very thin line.
It's so close to the edge.
Exactly.
Without going over.
I never really thought about buttonhole before, but thank God for that on in there, for that un.
It's doing a lot of heavy lifting.
Exactly. So the professor gets collared, let's just say, by a fellow professor, and you kind of get the impression really quickly that he's like a sort of a wacky professor of eccentric studies at the college. And
I got a little clip for him.
Aha! The ever-present green carnation.
Professor Porteous?
I have every reason to believe that the earth would stand stock still in the heavens were our Mr. Craig Lowell to appear on campus without his quotidian green carnation.
Yes, well, it's a favorite of my wife's, Professor.
And a very potent favor it is, my boy. In the realm of the occult, an area which, as you may perhaps know, occupies the major portion of my leisure hours, it is widely written that the green carnation, when set aflame in the presence
Professor, I do have a class waiting.
Very rude. But, so you've got the sort of professor of, witchcraft and wizardry. It's Hogwarts, by the way. We should have said that. And we've got our kind of straight-laced Professor Craig. Green carnation. See, I didn't actually even know that was a real flower. Like, I assumed that was, like, some invented... Like, because, like, at bodegas and stuff, they sell, like, flowers that they've dyed green. But I didn't realize that there were actually green flowers in nature. Did you Wikipedia this at all, or?
I gotta be honest with you, Fred. The fact that he was wearing a flower, the fact that they were discussing a flower did not even register to me until 15 minutes later, where it became important. Spoiler alert. But not a plant guy.
Okay.
Just,
This is. I thought I had relatively well cataloged all of your weird
eccentricities.
Yeah, your anti-dog stance, your extreme frugality, but this is your love of cheerwine. But this is a new one for the cabinet.
I'm not against plants. I just I don't care about them, and I don't want them in my home. That's all.
I think it goes without saying they don't have souls. Obviously, I mean that's they're the devil's playthings.
Exactly.
All right, cool. Anyway, so when the professor gets back home, he's out in the garden doing some kind of hunky, shirtless garden work.
All this yard work is definitely putting me in a bad spot because ever since we bought our home that we have here in Pittsburgh, from like May till October, November, I'm just doing battle with our yard every weekend. I hate it. Right. So
are you going to pave it over, or what's the strategy?
I've actually commented that I would be totally fine with that. I grew up in condominiums. I don't care about this green stuff. It's not my thing.
Fair. I mean, I grew up in an apartment building, but I don't know. I somehow survived that experience without hating plants. But cool.
Well, you also currently live in an apartment and don't have to take care of any of this stuff. I guess for some reason you have a plant in your house. I can't explain that. But
take care of the little SOBs. He's doing some gardening, and Aunt Ada is sitting in the garden, sort of looking sort of mischievous. I feel in a weird veil. And as the professor is doing his garden work, she sort of disappears. Like he looks over and she sees her, looks over, she's gone. And he wanders into the house to look for her, and she's reappeared, and they're having a conversation with Joanna, his wife. Now, I'm not going to join you in your hatred of plants, but I will say I found it extremely weird that when the professor comes into the house to look for Aunt Ada, he has a giant effing rose bush that he's carried in with him into the house. It's like, is the whereabouts of Aunt Ada so urgent that you can't put down the plant before you wander in? Maybe all of this plant stuff was just not registering with you, but did you notice that?
That it resonates more because last weekend I had to dig out 3 enormous bush root systems that were 75 pounds a piece. So yeah, it's hard for me to fathom carrying those things around in my. It makes me angry to think of them being in the house. So I don't know where he's.
Where he gets off. So yeah, he's like, oh, Aunt Ada, here you are. That's surprising. He goes over to her and she recoils in horror at the plants. So this is, you must have been like, okay, so when does Aunt Ada become the clear protagonist? Because she's the most likable, relatable character. But she apparently is extremely allergic to flowers to the point of horror and shock. She starts screaming. Right. And
it's funny because I actually made a note that's how I act when people try to serve me seafood. But now I'm thinking I don't even have to get into my neuroses about seafood. I can just say if someone tried to give me a plant, I'd probably have about the same reaction. Yeah.
So basically, your ideal scenario,
layers,
right? It's like sitting in a parking lot eating a hot dog would basically be more or less your happy
that sounds
place.
like an okay afternoon for me. I'd be good with it.
Okay, cool. And the hot dog was given to you for free at a hardware store that was having a special.
I'm certainly not paying for it. No.
Anyway, so this weird behavior by Aunt Ada definitely has the husband's hackles up, and he wants her out of the house. They fight about it. And then later that night, he gets up in the middle of the night to find his wife is downstairs with Aunt Ada early in the morning, around 1 a.m, and they're having a midnight snack with some herbs. And the professor grabs a pinch for himself, if you know what I mean. Grabs a little pinch of the herbs. And he brings it into the college to give to one of his professor buds, who analyzes these herbs that Aunt Ada is giving his wife.
I did think it was amusing that the scientist that he takes it to is clearly like the legitimate scientist at the college, kind of just gets to a roadblock and just tastes it.
Yeah,
like,
I
how much
noticed that.
science involves just tasting stuff to figure it out?
Exactly. I'm just freeballing here. There's a lot of like, put it under the microscope and put it in these beakers, and then let's just take a pinch. Yeah.
We dug this up out of, there was some mercury there, or some unidentified element. Let me just give it, hang on.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we're okay.
Yeah.
We're okay.
Yeah, he identifies it as seaweed. That's the initial thing. And then he kind of like more precisely gives it some sort of, Latin name, and then identifies it as witch's weed. So he now knows that this is witch's weed, which just kind of makes him suspicious because of Aunt Ada's weird teleportation and fear of flowers and late night herb sessions. And he visits the...
It's funny, like, if you had someone who lived with you who disappeared, like, isn't that just the end of it? I don't know. Maybe you just, like, don't want to accept it. You think, like, maybe I missed him, but the first time someone teleports, they're out.
You're out. I'm sorry, buddy.
It's not complicated.
I guess, but I think the episode is, it's making it seem like he doesn't know. I agree. I agree.
I can go with what they're doing, but I'm just saying.
Yeah. In my house, we don't brook any teleportation nonsense.
You pull that Nightcrawler stuff, you just need to you bamf yourself out of there, sir.
Exactly.
You're done.
You bamf yourself over to Craigslist. Anyway. Okay, so he takes this witch's weed to the creepy, wacky professor, the guy we saw earlier, the one who specializes in magic and witchcraft, to get some analysis from him.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my, yes, Hydrodendron Borrelia. Yes, indeed, by all means. Virulent, my boy. Potent, dangerous. Handle with care. That's what you do with witch's weed.
What I do? What are witches supposed to do with it? Granting their existence, of course, which I don't happen to do.
Very few people do, my boy, during the day. But the tolling of the midnight bell makes believers out of many. Which is your subject again, Mr. Lowell?
Logic and scientific method.
Of course. And you find it hard to fit the pentacle of Beelzebub into the Aristotelian square of opposition. In time, though, young man, in time.
Yes, quite.
Did you ever take any classes in scientific method
in
college?
I said as much in my Serling intro, but he's literally like a professor of not witchcraft. I'm a professor of not believing in magic.
Yeah,
what the hell?
I'm in a PhD in sciencey logic science.
Yeah. So stupid. I don't know. I also love the the wacky professor who definitely comes across as coded gay in that
well, did you recognize the professor?
Yeah, it's
Professor
Smith or Dr. Smith, right?
Yeah, who was most famous? Do you remember him from our jaunt through the Twilight Zone, though? His most famous line
he's in
Room for
one
One
more,
More,
honey. Yeah, he's in number 22. Yeah, exactly, 22. Yeah. He's just kind of like vaguely sexual, creepy, whatever he's in, pretty much.
I think it's like shocking that he didn't work more with Serling. Like, he just feels like he loves the Serling dialogue. Like, I mean, this episode was not written by Serling, but every time he opens his mouth, it's just heaping helpings of that stuff.
That's true. He's a fun actor. So yeah, apparently the herb, witch's weed, is something that witches use to put themselves into younger women's bodies in order to sort of carry on generationally as a witch. Which is, it's sort of an interesting addition to the witch folklore. I don't think I'd ever heard that particular one before. I can't even really think of like a classic folklore character that does that. Vampires live forever, Can you think of anything else that's like that? I thought it was kind of a cool idea.
I mean, I feel like there's some MST episodes that like deal with this whole like, what's the one I'm thinking of? She creature? No,
Not
like,
she creature. No.
Not she creature, but like using
Younger
harnessing
husk.
young women. Actually, when you say not vampires, but I believe there's a woman, and if I had the wherewithal, I guess I could Wikipedia it. The woman who like bathed in the blood of young virgins, who's like an actual historical figure.
Oh, I don't know.
Who got kind of tied in with Vlad the Impaler, but I think they actually lived in different time periods. Elizabeth Bathory.
I never heard of her.
I think she kind of gets. Yeah, I think she sometimes gets kind of tossed in with vampire mythos. So I think there is like a tradition of older women harnessing the life force of younger women to keep them live.
I guess Bleach Woman is kind of like that.
Yeah, the Bleach Woman, that's the one I was trying to think of. So, I mean, I don't know if I remember it specifically tied to, like, this is a part of, like, witches per se, but the general concept wasn't, earth-shattering to me.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting how it's, like, it blew my mind. No, I do think it's kind of interesting how, like, generally speaking, like, the male version of this, it's like they live forever, but, like, women are kind of like, we have to kill young women in order to like stay young. I mean, I'm not trying to win the woke Olympics. I just do think that it is interesting. Like, I do think there's something to that.
Vampires, I think, have to feed.
That's true.
Otherwise,
that's true.
They break down. So
But they don't lose their personhood, John. Anyway, let's keep going. Apparently, the green carnation, which we've talked about at length already, is it's like an anti-witch thing, and apparently you can burn it, and that's bad for witches, and it's just like a strong, it's a strong anti-witch thing, basically.
Right. And, was I like? I mean, I get it. We're in TV. We're in 20 minutes to finish the story, but were you like a little annoyed that the solution to the problem happened to be green carnations? Like, come on, man.
I was a little bit.
Well, you didn't have to do any damn work for this.
I was sort of confused by it because I assumed it would come back in the end where the wife like sort of knew that all along or something like that. Like I assumed that would be part of the twist, but at the end it's just very much not. But at that point I was already over it and my mind was on other things. But yes, I do agree. It is a little bit like. It's a little bit weird to have your main character walk into a dangerous situation wearing a red bandana, and they're like, "Now the only thing that can get us out of this is a red bandana." It's a little cheap.
Right. It's just like, I don't know if it's even lazy story. It's just like bad storytelling when the solution to the problem, your hero has it at the beginning and then knows it at the middle and then has to deal with it at the end. Like, you kind of just feel like there should be a little more work in the story.
No, that's a good point. I don't know. I didn't bother me too much, but I know what you mean. It's definitely lazy.
Well, I mean, it was plant-based, so I was just annoyed
Yes,
the whole time,
exactly.
but
If it had been a red bandana, it would have been fine. But the fact that it was a plant really got you going.
Yeah, like a plant's going to help you do anything. That's ridiculous.
Anyway, moving on. The Professor Craig goes looking for Aunt Ada. He's like ever more suspicious, and he decides to go look at. This was a little bit confusing to me. He ends up at like a cemetery, but why does he think to look at a cemetery? Was there an explanation for that? Like,
don't have a good answer for that. Don't remember. Don't know.
Okay. Well, he goes to a cemetery on some dubious rationale. Mm-hmm. Sorry, hold on a second. Let me get some water.
Wasn't that a Steinbeck novel on dubious ground?
Dubious rationale. Yeah, it is. So anyway, he goes to a cemetery for whatever reason, and he's looking for Aunt Ada, and he apparently she's dead. The Aunt Ada that his wife's aunt is in the ground. And he gets shown to her grave by an extremely folksy gravedigger. Like one of the most folksy characters we've encountered in the Night Gallery. Did we get a clip from this or
I feel regretful that no, I did not get a clip of him. But
well, when they look at the grave, apparently like it's it had lime on it, so nothing could grow on it or something. But when they look at it, it's covered in flowers. And the gravedigger says, I quote, "Well, I'll be swintered." Like, just not a word at all. It's completely making up.
Did you double check the OED on that one?
I don't know. I didn't look it up. I had to turn on the closed captions to see what he was saying. I think that was probably a stab in the dark. But let's check out swintered. What does that mean?
Well, Urban Dictionary does have swint.
Okay.
So that's good.
What does it say swint is?
The word swint is used to describe anything without using the word F dash dash dash. It can be used in any given situation. So I guess it's like a modern day equivalent of fudge. Though I guess by modern day it's from 2010 and one dude named Swint Swag Striker. So maybe Swint Swag Striker was trying to make Swint happen and it never really caught on.
Interesting. There are flowers growing on the grave, which is super surprising for some reason. And the professor drives home to kind of like really, really confront Aunt Ada. It was at this point that I noticed his car. Did you have any thoughts about his car?
I don't remember his car. I mean, it was very 70s.
Exactly, yeah. It's like the most 70s car. It's a Woody station wagon with an avocado finish. Like, it's just a car that, like, disintegrated in 1981. It's, like, completely ceased to exist. But, yeah.
You mean you didn't order the metallic P?
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so he's confronting Aunt Ada, and it was very... This is another weird beat. He sees her chair... and her wicker chair, and he like grabs it and he's like, oh, and throws it in a stream. Why was he so shocked by her wicker chair? Was something cut out there, or what was going on?
I'm not a logician or a scientific methodologian by trade, so I don't know exactly what he's doing here.
It's like it made me think something was cut out of it or something like that, but it's like we haven't even that closely identified Aunt Ada with the wicker chair, and suddenly this is like the thing that he hates. Anyway, he throws it in a stream, and then he goes up to Aunt Ada and confronts her in an extremely Rod Serling-esque manner.
And I have no reason to believe it is not presently occupied by the person whose name is inscribed on the headstone above it. Therefore, I ask you this question, madam. Who are you?
Why, you have seen my picture in the family album. Joanna showed it to you.
I've seen a fuzzy snapshot taken 40 years ago of a middle-aged woman Joanna identifies as you, and you concur in that identification. Now, if you are, in fact, the great Aunt Ada Quigley whose picture appears in the album, you are also the great Aunt Ada Quigley who is buried in the graveyard at Bakerton. If you are not one, you are not the other. And as you're standing before me this very moment, you are clearly not in your grave at Bakerton. And if you are not in your grave, you are neither in the photograph album. So I repeat, madam, who are you?
Now, I mean, I took the LSAT, so I had to do the logic puzzles and all, but I still feel like I had trouble following that one.
It's weird. It's like kind of written in the style of like an amicus brief. Like it just doesn't sound like someone speaking English. What did you think about this whole? I mean, I understand why they made him.
I will cite to the president of Creepy Professor versus Carnation.
Yeah, it's just weird. Like what? Obviously, they made him a professor of logic because it's like it would blow his mind to encounter like black magic and witch stuff. But like, just did they need to have him talk like that? Like he doesn't talk like that normally. You know what I mean?
My takeaway was the writer made him a professor of logic and scientific method, and then the professor did whatever the early 70s equivalent of Wikipedia for logic was. So they checked out a book on classical logic from like academic logic and just grabbed some words and tried to like write a syllogism based around like finding a witch in a cemetery, and it just came out very confusing.
It's funny because like when he talks, most of his other lines are just like, tell me more. Oh, that's interesting. So you don't really get it that much. But then when he has like a speech, you're like, whoa, where did this character come from? But yeah, totally.
It's like his Perry Mason moment, but it's just much too confusing.
Yeah,
like, it feels like A Few Good Men, like he's really nailing her to the wall, but like, what is he saying?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's funny. Very few kind of like J'accuse type speeches have like Aristotelian written into them.
Right.
But anyway, all his logic is not that useful, but his green carnation is, and she's terrified of it, and I think like disappears or something. Like when he gets really close to her, she's like, and she disappears. Yeah. So later that evening, the professor is calling Dr. Smith up to discuss the witchcraft at hand. While as he's calling, we kind of intercut with Aunt Ada up in her room doing some interpretive dance with her cane. Some very enjoyably wacky witch behavior. And
and I thought at this time, like, you know, as an older actress who's had a long career, like, do you feel like this is kind of fun? Like, I'm getting to stretch and do different things? Or are you just feeling like this is kind of demeaning? Like, I'm on, you know, the night gallery, like, hooting around in a circle. Like,
I don't know.
Do you just have to, like, embrace it? What do you do? It would be hard for me, but I'm not an actor.
Yeah. I mean, I suspect she looked like she was enjoying herself. You know what I mean? Like, it seemed more like she was having fun with it than, like, you know, Bela Lugosi and Ed Wood, you know. Like, I think my mom, who just retired recently, would definitely enjoy pretending to be a witch in an episode of Night Gallery, but it depends on the gal. You know, I definitely could imagine her, like, just kind of, like, you know, doing it once and the director being like, no, more like a witch, and her just being like...
I could feel like... I just imagine this actress being like, I screen tested with Cary Grant. Like, exactly. How did I end up here?
Yeah.
You know?
No, I hear you. Yeah. She's doing the spell, and it's on Professor Dr. Smith, and he's going over to answer the phone from his professor friend, and they're obviously going to get this whole witchcraft thing figured out. But just then he's overcome with a choking spell, and he goes down and has a heart attack of some kind. So the witch, Aunt Ada, prevented him from taking the call. And for some reason, this Professor Porteous, the sort of witchcraft professor, his housekeeper answers the phone and is like, hey, how's it going? And then it's like, oh, I can't really talk to you because the professor just died. So it's very, I mean, they do their best to sell it, but it's kind of a weird little moment. So Professor Craig knows that, you know, clearly Aunt Ada has... what was that?
This is like... I think the spot where we get one, I would say, good shot of when he gets the revelation. You kind of, the door slides open on its own, and you can kind of see in the background up on the second floor, Aunt Ada's staring at him with kind of how you like me now face. Like, it's just, that was the one, like, pretty, like, genuinely creepy, good, effective moment for me.
Yeah, it's cool. Like, the slow reveal of the multiple doors, and she's, like, really far back in the frame. For her expression, I wrote down, yeah, bitch, I did that. So, you know, a little bit of A, a little bit of B.
Same idea.
Yeah, exactly. What's weird is that all this is building up, and it's like, clearly Aunt Ada, like, is a witch and can kill people, but somehow the professor's tone doesn't really, like, match that peril. Like, in the next scene, he's doing more shirtless garden work, you know?
Professor Lost in Space has told him explicitly witches are trying to get at young women to, you know, get young again, and he has not yet connected the dots to his wife and how she's in danger. Like,
well, I think he did.
I think he gets it pretty quick, but it takes him like a couple more minutes before he really gets there.
Like minutes, but like in his timeline, like days. You know,
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
It's weird. Anyway, he's doing some conspicuously shirtless garden work. And apparently Aunt Ada is leaving the day after tomorrow. Joanna, his wife, comes and lets him know. So that's great. Yeah. But then the professor realizes that that's the day of the witch's equinox, or whatever it is, the day that she's going to once and for all take over his wife's body. So that's quite scary. And indeed, that very night, the witch sneaks past the professor to give his wife some of that tea that gets her ready for the whole body takeover. Before he sort of violently throws her out of the room. And again, it's just like, none of this is like a conversation with his wife. I don't know. It's, like, if like my wife like grabbed my mom and like bodily threw her down the stairs, like, I think we'd talk about it, but I don't know. Whatever.
But what if it was your aunt?
Okay,
you know, you may not care as much.
True, that would be fine. Anyway, so the witch Aunt Ada is trying to get Professor Craig out of the house, and she's up in her room doing her weird, you know, dance. And what it leads to is the Professor Craig gets a telegram that he needs to take over a class that's apparently being taught at like 10 p.m. at the college.
This is a very amusing thing where there's like a philosophical emergency.
Yes,
like the philosophy.
They really try and sell it too. Like, the wife is like, you got to take over Professor Smith's class. Like, he's your best friend. It's like, Do I?
This is not how it works in college. It's like they just cancel.
Yeah.
Life moves on. It's okay.
Yeah, or the TA does it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are better solutions to this problem. Okay.
Well, he's explaining to the wife that he has to take her over this class, but he doesn't want to. And then he decides to bite the bullet and, go back on the Hippocratic oath of logic and scientific method that he took. And, cave in and admit that he believes that Aunt Ada's a witch and tell his wife about it.
Yeah.
And do we have any clips from this? Or
Nope.
All right.
Keep it moving.
You get the basic idea. She doesn't believe it herself. And she proposes, rather than him staying, to protect her from Aunt Ada, he go teach the class, but she go take it and sit in.
Yeah.
So they agree on that, and then we cut to the class.
This is where I thought, he references the square of opposition, which I looked up. That's a term in classical logic. I think the writer either took a class in college or checked out a book and kind of filled in some gaps, but,
Yeah,
whatever.
I mean, it's for us, it's as easy as a Google search. He actually had to go to the library to do that, so that's obviously something.
Yeah, definitely. Adds color.
So the professor's teaching this believable class on logic and scientific method.
In the middle of the night.
Yes, exactly.
On a dark and stormy night.
It is literally a dark and stormy night. But meanwhile, Aunt Ada is at home doing, drawing. It's, it's like kind of a cute little thing. He's drawing his Aristotelian square. And
Right.
Meanwhile, at home, we intercut with Aunt Ada drawing like a Aristotelian pentagram. She's drawing like a satanic thing. So that's kind of cute.
Yeah.
And so
she's doing her little incantation. I've got a little clip. Here you go.
Jehovah, our wishes, chief of the East, peace of trust. Come to this body, soon powder and rust.
And as with life itself, there are
Our wishes, chief of the
A
East,
while, but yeah.
I kind of like her spell. It's sort of like it's like a verse. It's like a sick rap verse.
Yeah.
It's kind of lit.
Well, I mean, it's like Macbeth style.
Yeah,
which,
yeah.
She's got kind of like that Shakespearean verse to it, so it's good.
Exactly.
Double, double, toil and trouble, etc., etc.
Anyway, so the wife is under the thrall of this spell, and she kind of is overtaken, and she leaves class.
Right, and this is like totally weak
Yeah.
to me. I don't know. There are a lot of things to be unhappy with, but
In
the
life.
whole point is like I'm gonna bring my wife to the class because I'm worried that a witch is trying to steal her essence and
Yeah.
kill her and everything. But if she's in the class, it's cool. And it's like it's not even like one of those huge halls in college with like 500 students. It's like a
Yeah.
reasonable sized classroom, and somehow he's just facing the chalkboard
Yeah,
for a
exactly.
couple minutes.
Yeah.
Well,
those
so she can walk out
Aristotelian
without getting caught.
diagrams don't draw themselves, John. It takes a long time.
It reminded me of like a wrestling match when the tag team
Yeah.
when they distract the ref,
Yeah,
so
exactly.
someone can bring a chair in
Yeah.
and bash the guy's head in, and then it's like, what happened?
Yeah.
It is a little far fetched, but okay.
No, I agree. It's
I understand I'm being a pedant to get angry at this in an episode about a witch battling like a logician, but
No,
still.
I agree. I thought it was a little bit weird. I was like envisioning they never clearly like telegraphed the space that well. So I was thinking
Right.
like, oh, it's a big lecture hall, but I agree. I don't think it was. I think it was like an honor seminar sized room. So I do think it's a little crazy that he doesn't notice, but he doesn't.
Yeah.
Maybe it's part of the spell. And the wife gets into the car, into the avocado green Woody, and drives back through the dark and stormy night, dark and 70s night. And the husband, I don't know, an hour later notices that his wife isn't there. And but of course he doesn't have a car, so he has to dash off through the storm. What follows is like a very drawn out scene of Aunt Ada trying to get the wife to drink the tea, which will sort of finalize the contract. And Aunt Ada is remarkably, even though the wife just seems totally under her spell, Aunt Ada is like, take your time, like, just drink it whenever you feel like it. So I found that pretty weak as well too. I don't know.
I don't know what it was going on. I gotta lay this, I guess, at the feet of the director, but like this whole climax, even though we've been kind of dogging it, the story was humming along okay at a decent pace, but I felt like the whole climax was very drawn out, very dull. Like it should be, it should be accelerating and getting more exciting, and somehow it just slows as it goes.
Yeah, and there's a whole lot of like the witch casting her spell, Anita casting her spell is a long, like, that takes a while.
Yeah.
That's like a long shake. That's not just like a sonnet. That's like 3 sonnets.
Right.
And the climax, Professor Craig, finally gets home. He finds Joanna unconscious at the kitchen table. And upstairs, Aunt Ada's got some witchcraft working, and they kind of exchange some banter and disses. Did you enjoy what she calls him?
What'd she call him?
Silky Wizard.
It's so weird that just was my college nickname too.
Exactly.
I mean, what are the odds?
Kind of sounds like a boner pill or something like that. Like one that you buy at a drugstore for $2, something like that. Anyway, sorry.
Let's finish it up.
Yeah, okay. So down in the kitchen, things are getting real weird. There's suddenly a whole bunch of witches for some reason, and Professor Porteous, the Dr. Smith character, appears randomly to remind us all about the green carnation thing for some reason.
Right. Somehow maybe we forgot because some people tuned in before the commercial
Exactly,
break.
yeah.
Or after the commercial break.
Right. And it's like sort of unclear what's going on, but Craig burns the green carnation and the witches disappear, and it seems like Joanne is okay.
Yeah, the carnation, by the way, he didn't just burn it, it like explodes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
his wife apparently got it at like a fireworks roadside stand. But
Anyway, so it seems like things are fine, and we cut to the next scene, and it's like a very like idyllic morning, much like the one that opened up the episode. And it's their typical morning ritual, only she does not give Craig a green carnation as he's driving to the office, and he kind of like is mildly bothered by it, but puts it out of his mind. And then we get a shot of Joanna sort of recoiling in horror at the flowers, like, ugh. And, then we cut,
which
obviously, with
seemed like the natural order of things have been restored. Good. I'm happy.
Well, it's weird, because it's like, clearly the episode is indicating that Aunt Ada was successful in taking over Joanna's body-ish.
Right.
But they do kind of leave the top spinning on that one a little bit. Like, I
didn't think so. I was just making a joke about not liking plants. Yeah, I mean, I got it. I just didn't care at this point because I feel like the climax took like 10 minutes.
Yeah, it did tire you out a little bit. Like, didn't leave much left over for the very end. But yeah, I mean,
I feel like the story and this climax could be a nice twist, and it's just it just was bungled in the climax. Like, it wasn't exciting, it wasn't tense, it certainly wasn't scary. It just took a long time, and then when it got to, Aunt Ada made it, it's just like, I don't care. Just
get me out of here. But I don't know, I thought it was kind of interesting, because, like, the reveal that Aunt Ada probably did make it is somewhat subtle, you know what I mean? Like, I agree. Somewhat impressed by the restraint. Like, it wasn't like her being like, it was like...
I agree, and I think it could have been good if, like, the preceding 7 or 8 minutes had been handled well.
Yeah.
It's just like I was kind of checked out emotionally at this point.
I
agree. I do think it was cool that it was understated in the way it was.
And it also kind of, like, begged the question of, like, so is it Aunt Ada's goal to become a young person and then just, like, hang out in the body for a while? Because, like, I thought it was going to be like she'd just go off and run off and rejoin her coven as a young person, but was like,
I don't know, Fred, the thing is, opposites attract.
Yeah.
Maybe like something about Craig really
yeah, this was all part of the dance, him throwing her down the stairs and her drawing a pentagram in his guest room really is
I don't know.
Yeah,
this could have could have legs.
Yeah.
But that's the end.
It's like, my goal is to replace your wife and basically just kind of be her. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, so that's the episode.
Yeah.
I don't know. Any deep thoughts here?
No, and we've still got a long ways to go for tonight, so I don't know if there's a whole lot of deep thoughts. I mean, whatever. Witch tries to get a young woman. I'm sure if we wanted to, like, parse, if this were a Twilight Zone episode, maybe we'd do the heavy lifting of trying to dig out meaning. But it's a Night Gallery episode.
Okay.
Maybe we should
We're
just
off
keep
the
things
hook.
moving.
Did you want to do any bios and trivia for it, or do you want to do that all at the very end?
Why don't we just try and keep on trucking and do it all at the end?
So yeah, I agree. Let's just skip ahead to the next little segment. This one hopefully shouldn't take too long. It's called With...
Which we...
What?
Yeah, we weren't planning to really originally do this, and then I saw Adam West, and I thought, oh God, we've got to do this, and then it happened, and I was like, well, I guess we're doing this.
Yeah,
okay,
I mean,
let's
I
do
don't
it.
even, like, the plot, it's like, it basically is a cartoon.
We've
That's the
said
weird
this
thing
before.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a Playboy cartoon turned into a little bit, but I mean, the whole thing is, what, maybe a minute long?
Yeah, or maybe a couple minutes, but yeah, it's basically, I'll just run through it. It opens in this sort of like mad science laboratory. You've got this disheveled mad scientist giving a potion to a British gentleman, or a gentleman played by Adam West. And he drinks this weird bubbling concoction, and it like slowly starts.
It should be said, it's called With Apologies to Mr. Hyde.
Right,
so
of
we're
course,
already
yes.
primed for Jekyll Hyde, okay.
Exactly.
etc.
And as the potion, works its magic, it slowly transforms Adam West into like a creepy looking dude with gray skin and weird hair. And he staggers over to a mirror in the corner of the laboratory and looks at himself and delivers quite the joke. We have this clip, or
No, we don't have a clip.
All right.
It's, I told you a million times, go easy on the vermouth. I can't even. Kudos to Adam West for being able to conjure up the effort to deliver the line, with any level of sincerity. I can't.
Why did they even feel the need to make this? Like, couldn't they have just like? But like
the fact that they got Adam West to do this.
I know.
I mean, I know Batman had ended, but there had to be better things going on than this. Like,
maybe.
I mean, he must have seen it as a lark and kind of fun, but like, God, you must have thought like,
I don't know. Maybe
better things to be doing.
Maybe Rod helped.
He had to sit in a makeup chair for like 2 hours at least.
I know. Maybe he owed Rod a favor or something. Like Rod helped him like get away with an affair or something like that. But yeah, let's keep chugging along. We got a whole other segment to go. That's it's like maybe a 3-panel cartoon, not a 1-panel cartoon, but a 3-paneler, and it's called The Flip Side of Satan. And we're gonna go ahead and hear Rod's intro for it.
We refer to him by different names: Lucifer, Mephistopheles, Beelzebub. But by any other name, he'd smell of brimstone. These the ingredients to a one-man stew. A disc jockey, a radio show, and a painting we call The Flip Side of Satan.
Don't remember the painting at all. Any thoughts there?
Oof,
okay.
Wow.
It's funny, when we first started doing the Night Gallery, I was like, I bet we're going to have so many funny things to say about the paintings. And I think it's been like 5 swings and 5 misses. Let's just drop the painting conversation. It's because I was an art history major, so I'm trying to like get that in.
It's a painting of Satan.
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 Yeah.
I don't know. It's a face. It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
I'm not an art person.
All right.
Whatever.
I hate plants, seafood. We've added 3 things to the tally.
I don't hate art. I would like more art in the house. Less pictures of plants.
Exactly.
If they're paintings of plants, that art I can't count.
Null and void.
But
yeah.
other art.
Yeah. All right, so we heard my Serling style intro. Shall we give the jingle another trot in the yard?
Yeah. Unfortunately, mine is a little bit more out there. So ideally, this would have been done first. But we'll go ahead and do it, and hopefully, it won't be too long.
All right.
Good evening, everyone out there on the highways and byways. You're listening to KROD. We put the rod in radio. I'm your host, Hot Serling, and I'll be serving up the best of top 40 classic rock and everything in between. Our first cue is sure to get your groove thing moving. I'll take a little advice from my old friend Mr. Steven Tyler himself and just push play. Sorry, folks. Must have been some radio signal crossed somewhere. Got the wrong track in the stacks. But fear not. Our old Uncle Rod has got you covered. Let's get on with the show with this classic favorite from 1971. All right, folks, I think I know what's going on here. In the radio biz, there's a little tradition among DJs to razz the new guy by messing with his playlist. A nice little welcome from Casey Masham and Lunchbox. Very funny, guys. All right. For real this time, one of the biggest songs from the 80s. A thrilling track from the baddest guy around.
You see, my name is Freddy, and I'm here to say, I'll wrap you up and take you away. Feel like you're tired and ready for bed. Don't fall asleep or you'll wake up dead.
The Night Gallery.
Nice. That was maybe set a record for the longest Serling intro.
It was a long way to get to Freddys Rap, wasn't it? Long walk to go along to get there.
It's quite the journey. Which one does Freddie rap in? Or is that like just something
I believe that happens. You know, I'm not the scholar that I would like to be, but
Right.
I believe that is part of the end of the 5th movie,
Yeah.
which is, I would say, probably my least favorite of all of them. I think I've only seen it once or twice, but I'm fairly certain the Freddy rap comes out in the 5th.
So in what context is he rapping in?
It's a track that plays over the end credits. They don't actually
okay,
have
got
him
it,
rap
got it,
in
okay.
the body of it.
Right.
But it certainly does happen. So
It's a thing that happens. Okay, cool. All right. Well, anyway, let's get into the plot.
And I should, so we're all clear, the rap is largely performed by the Fat Boys. So,
Okay, cool.
And I just, you know, Wikipedia is here to help. Everyone, please donate. It was actually part of the theme for Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4, The Dream Master, which is not a bad movie, but not one of my favorites of the series. I think we've gone through my rankings.
Yes, yeah,
prior
we've
episodes.
definitely discussed the Nightmare on Elm Street movies in depth.
The canon.
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. Back to Night Gallery. So we open, and it's late at night or early in the morning in the 70s, and a sort of sad-looking kind
I mean,
of...
there's a brown haze
Yeah.
over everything.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, it's very
I
like...
think that was just part of like the Carter Ford years. You never knew.
Yeah, it's like
The
smog.
dusk is it's
and-
dawn, whatever.
Yeah, it's like smog and cigarette, and like, I don't know, stagflation rust just in the air. And he's it's like a guy in a leather vest getting out of a gremlin. Like, it's just very 70s. And he's our main character is by the name of J.J. Wilson, and he's like kind of like he looks sort of like an aging hippie. Like, he had a pretty great time in the 60s, and now it's like still wearing the same clothes, but they're a little tighter around the midriff.
Well, but the thing is, I mean, this episode was what, 71?
Oh, yeah, I guess that's a good point.
Double check,
yeah.
September 29th, 71. So what you're really looking at is like an old guy, maybe like an old hepcat who's like desperately trying to cling to the trend.
That's a good point.
So-
Yeah, maybe that's more the thing. Like, he had a great time in 1956 or something like that.
Right.
Like, he knew Kerouac's drug dealer or something like that. Yeah. All right. Well, he's a slightly older guy who's dressed like, you know, a cool guy in the 70s, although he's like a little pudgy and a little old.
I mean, it's clearly this is like the Night Gallery's idea of a hippie.
Yes, exactly.
See John Aston from a couple episodes back.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that I would imagine at the time probably read as really fake, but Rod probably walked on set and was like, perfect. You nailed it. Anyway, so this guy is arriving at a radio station, I guess really, really early in the morning, and he's kind of an insane person. And he's showing up at the graveyard shift at this radio station. And he like kicks the doors in, and he's like, "Hey, it's JJ, baby!" And he starts turning on all the equipment, and apparently his set has to be entirely programmed. There's no variation. It's Squaresville, Daddy-O. And then he turns on all the lights, and right before his set time is about to start, he cues some rather wonderful introduction music, which we've already heard, but let's just take it out for another spin. Bernard Herrmann really fell off in his later years. I don't know. I really that just tickled me a lot. It's funny because you cut off the intro of it when he says, "Who's better than JJ?" and then hits play.
Yeah, and I think I actually cut off a couple bars of the. Like, I think you get like 4 repeats of just the music, then you get, for some reason, 5 repeats of the J.J. Wilson instead of the classic 4.
Yeah, it's really
then a couple more of just the instrumental.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It doesn't have the punch of the radio DJs of today.
Yeah, exactly. As someone who has recreated that song, like detail for detail, I can say it's powerfully lazy. Just like it's just one riff going up and down, and the vocal line is just like, yeah, it's like Let's Go Band with a wah pedal underneath it. I love the whole scene because the actor like very clearly cannot hear the music that is being played. And indeed has never heard the music that's being played, but has been tasked by the director to like react to it. So he's just kind of like moving around in a non-rhythmic way and like kind of opening his mouth but not saying any words. It's just like kind of a masterpiece, little performance there. But anyway, and another thing I liked about it a lot too, and this is a little behind the curtain thing, but like I don't know if when you're taking notes for these episodes you like struggle to remember characters' names. Like, is that a problem for you?
Yeah, certainly.
Because you're just like, I'm, like in the last episode, for example, I'm like, the professor, the professor's wife. Like, you don't think of Craig.
I wouldn't have remembered Craig.
Yeah.
Right.
But when your main character, like, has a song that's, like, 1 minute long, that's just his name getting repeated over and over again, you remember the character.
I kind of wish, like, more Dostoevsky novels would have that to accompany it, because it's so hard to keep track of everyone.
Anyway, so he starts his DJ set with some sort of goofy, bad banter, and, then turns on the sort of pre-programmed music that the bosses at this radio station have given him to play. Mm-hmm. But it's not like a cool hit 70s song. It's
I've actually let's hear this.
You're gonna hear the sounds of now. Sounds to blow your mind and do your thing by. Sounds like only JJ can play. Your kind of music, I know. From midnight to dawn. I picked it out.
That was my immediate reaction, is like, for a professional DJ who styles himself as the best, he like for some reason leaves in like a 4-second bit of dead air while he's cueing the track.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, "Here I go, baby. Here's the song." Like,
hang on. Click.
Yeah, it's kind of like our podcast like, pre-edit,
Right. I mean, honestly, even if it were a good track, it'd be like, well, this guy kind of got off on the wrong foot,
Totally. Yeah, it's bad. Anyway, while this weird
for the track, I got to mention too, like in Austin, I listen to classical music virtually like all day long during work, and when I'm reading at night before bed, I'd like to have it on. And there's on the weekends, I think, at night in Austin, they'd play Organ Hour, which doesn't bother me at all. I'm fine with it, but my wife hated it. She would like make me turn it off. It would often be like turning on the radio to listen to like exactly like that.
So that was a familiar thing for you then.
So when he queued it up, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I think I know this one. Cool. Okay.
I feel like, over the course of the 156 episodes of The Twilight Zone, we were very slowly teasing out the peculiarities of your personality, but I feel like they're just coming fast, and I can't even process them.
This episode is just like letting the floodgates loose.
Exactly. Plus, there's my collection of Chinese silk robes that I wear all the time. Anyway, so we're listening to this weird, depressing organ music, and while it's spinning, J.J. Williams calls his agent to complain about this crappy DJ gig. And his conversation is it's like a masterpiece of character. You only hear one side of the conversation, but you completely understand everything that's happening, and it's like 4 minutes long. You know what I mean? It's one of those like, well, but what about this and what about that? Like if they filmed the other side of the conversation, it would just be the other guy going like, okay, yes, I agree. You know what I mean?
At least half of the episode are these phone conversations where he's like monologuing about, faux dialoguing about the backstory of what's going on, and I couldn't be bothered to get a single clip of any of them. It was just like, I don't know.
Yeah.
We can discuss more, but
I mean,
it didn't grab me.
No, it's pure exposition and just handled, from one half of a phone conversation. The agent suspects that JJ had an affair with the agent's wife, and later the agent's wife committed suicide, and so JJ thinks that he's being punished for this supposed thing that happened by being sent to this podunk little town to be a DJ on a graveyard shift. So that's the basic setup for why this DJ is here. Anyway.
And I might have this in the clip, but do you remember what he refers to the location where he's at as?
I don't know. What does he say?
He calls it Lower Slobovia.
Okay.
Have you ever
what's
heard that term?
No, what does that mean?
It caught my ear. I feel like maybe I've heard it once, I don't know, but apparently, according to the internet, also Lower Slobovia, also sometimes called Outer, Inner, Central, Upper, or Lowest Slobovia, is a term used in conversation to denote a place which is underdeveloped, socially backward, remote, impoverished, or unenlightened. It was first coined by Al Capp in 1946.
Interesting.
So, in the Little Abner cartoons. So, yeah, that is a...
Sounds vaguely
we
racist in a
Lower
way.
Slobovia back.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's like born out of his fierce hatred of Eastern Europeans.
Yeah, I don't know. I think now probably what I would say is Podunk. That would be like a podunk town. You know what I mean?
I feel like Podunk even feels a little dated to
Yeah,
me, but I don't know what like the more appropriate is. Like I don't know.
J.J. Williams tosses out some truly bad DJ. He's actually I would say a bad DJ. His jokes are very unfunny.
Yeah. Honestly, it's hilarious that he has a little device he holds up.
Yeah,
a little applause meter. It brought back memories, which I've mentioned before, and I've emailed you subsequently. It just brings back memories of Leslie Nielsen's fart machine.
Yeah.
He's got like a little applause. Like, if he had the technology, he would be using it.
Oh yeah, no question. But it's not an applause meter. It's like a little sound maker.
Yeah, not an applause meter, like a little applause machine.
Right. It goes like or boo or whatever. And doesn't it also go like hoo or what the hell is that thing?
Honestly, I don't know if we're being unfair. Did DJs of the early 70s not have soundboards yet to have like the tapes where they could hit the crazy clips, or is this an issue where it's his first night on the job and so he didn't have time to get his tapes in and so he's got to rely on this little device? I don't know, but
I don't know.
It's unimpressive.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. It's a weird little thing. I don't know. I remember like thinking like, well, should I Google this? And I started typing in like weird small DJ sound machine 70s. I was just like, screw it. I don't care enough to figure this one out. Lower Slobovia comes a lot easier.
Well, if that doesn't blow your mind, then I'm beginning to wonder what fills up that space between my ears. Or as the pilot said before taking off this afternoon from Fun City,
JJ, I'm going to be flying at 30,000 feet. You fly any higher than that, and you're on your own.
And wait till you hear what's coming to you next on KPH, the J.J. Wilson Show.
So much dead air.
Again, yeah.
Know you groovy cats out there, you tell me.
And I thought we were way out in Gotham City.
Ooh, is that like a little Adam West nod there?
I don't know. That's a lot of dead air.
He is
Grand Canyon there.
Like, there's all this backstory of like, oh, did his agent screw him? It's like maybe he just was poor at his job.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe like K-Rock in LA was just like, this isn't working, exactly. So you need to go to
cavernous dead air and goofy fart machine. Not winning over the new alternative.
Yeah, I don't think this has anything to do with the affair.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so while this weird avant-garde piece it feels kind of like it's by Ligeti or something. It feels very like weird and wacky.
I think we have a little bit more of it. Oh wait. Be real real, Fred? Did that kind of get you?
Yeah, it did.
It?
I kind of did. I'm not gonna lie. I've definitely seen much worse than that on an average night in a Brooklyn venue, like for sure. It's kind of cool. It honestly sounds kind of neat. I don't know if I'd want to listen to it for like 20 minutes, but I thought I was impressed by that. So. Over this weird piece, JJ calls Bert Fox, who's a friend of his, and apparently he was like the alibi who, covered up this affair that JJ indeed did have with his agent's wife. And apparently, it's kind of confusing because like JJ had an affair with her, but then she later committed suicide. I don't exactly understand. Was it supposed to be JJ's fault? Was that clearly implicated? He seemed a little bit callous.
I genuinely just did not care.
Okay.
I mean, they were trying to make this happen, and did you ever see a movie called Secret Honor?
No.
It was a Robert Altman movie. It's like very theatrical, like stagish, theatrical. Is that what you call it? Yeah. Like, it's one guy alone playing Nixon. Like, it's a one-man show of a movie, like Nixon dealing with his guilt over what he's done. Mm-hmm. And I just kind of, like, couldn't help but think of that movie in this. And it's like, this actor is not capable of handling 20 minutes alone. Like, he can't do it. And after, like, 5 minutes of him on the phone alone trying to carry this, like, dramatic beat, I was like, no. Not paying attention. Can't do it. If you're gonna pull out the fart machine, I'll grab a clip, but I'm not dealing with this.
Yeah,
like, you can't do it. Sorry.
What was that story what was that movie that came out sort of recently with Tom Hardy as like a character just driving somewhere, and the entire movie takes place with him on the phone? You remember that one?
I heard about it. I don't remember the name.
Yeah.
I think there was a similarly kind of gimmicky movie. I don't know if it was. I think there were other people in it, but there was like a Robert Pattinson movie. It was a Cronenberg movie that was like all him in a limousine. I think maybe other actors ended up getting in the limit. But yeah, again, like Tom Hardy, I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion about him as an actor, but maybe he could pull off like 90 minutes. This actor...
Not so much, It's like a bit player on Laugh-In is not really the ideal vehicle for your one-man
that gets
show.
into his bio, but like, what would be the equivalent? It's like,
I don't know.
I don't know, like David Spade.
Yeah.
Like we're trying to like do the dramatic beats too. It's just like, no.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
Sorry.
I hear you. It's a little wonky. What was I going to say? Locke is the movie with Tom Hardy, by the by. It's fine. It's like a gimmicky thing. He talks a lot about like honor and stuff. It's like one of those movies.
I really like Cronenberg, but we watched about 20 minutes of the Pattinson and movie, and it was just like, no.
Wasn't that based off a Don DeLillo novel? That's like...
Yeah, that was part of the reason why we might have turned it off.
Those three elements just don't belong together. Cronenberg, Pattinson, DeLillo. Such a weird little combo, yeah. I remember that.
Did we have to read... I think a DeLillo book was one of the books that was assigned in our...
was it?
In our modern American fiction class we took together, which... That was
White
one
Noise?
of the several... I think it probably was White Noise. I think that was one of the several books where I was just like read a little bit and it was like,
back to Logan's Run.
BS in class because this isn't going to work. Yeah, exactly.
Back to my Steelers fan fiction I'm working.
Yep.
I'm not the biggest White Noise fan. I'm a DeLillo fan, but I did like White Noise. But anyway, whatever. We are very far afield. So J.J. Williams is talking to Bert Fox, and apparently he's guilty of something involving his agent's wife. I mainly was fixated on his leather vest tassels getting tangled up in the phone cord as he walked around. I thought that was fun. And the music's getting weirder and weirder, and we start to hear an evil voice reciting some sort of satanic-sounding stuff. And JJ decides to bail on that song, and we kind of get some more backstory about how he was apparently a great DJ in New York, although that might be more in JJ's head than in reality. And he decides to put on a modern-sounding record by a band called The Karmas, which is kind of cute, I guess. And then he pulls out of the plastic sleeve, so he knows it really is by The Karmas. And he puts it on, and the weird music keeps playing. I was kind of bummed because I wanted to hear The Karmas, but yeah. So he thinks the DJs at this radio station are playing a trick on him, sort of to haze him, by putting wacky records in, and he's trying to find them to yell at them, but suddenly he can't get out of the room. and weird noises start playing, and JJ kind of.
So at this point, Fred, you're probably pretty freaked out, right?
Oh yeah, this whole thing's terrifying.
You're turning the lights on at this point.
Exactly. Woke my wife up, called her into the room, made her hold my hand. Third time, because with apologies to Mr. Hyde, definitely kind of had me on edge. Yeah, it's terrifying, and he's he eventually like kind of backs up into this wall, which has a bunch of pictures of past DJs, haunted DJs. And apparently they only, it's like in memoriam of these DJs who worked at this station, but apparently all of them only worked there a day. And so he's really freaked out by that, and he wanders over to the power thing, and he slams it shut. And we get like a kind of fun effects shot of him getting electrocuted. I sort of enjoyed this. It was kind of groovy. It's like a psychedelic electrocution.
Were we supposed to totally just read this as accidental? Was there anything about him just intent? Was did the spirit move him to grab that, or was it just him bumbling?
I think he was trying to shut off the weird music, right?
Okay. I don't know. I couldn't tell if the evil had possessed him to grab the circuits.
No, I think he was trying to shut off the weird music and got electrocuted.
All right.
And then at the very end, his picture is added to the wall of dead DJs, John. And
then Kubrick just stole that shit for the end of The Shining.
I know, exactly. The direct lift. So yeah, that's the end of the episode. I didn't get what he's getting. Obviously, he's getting his comeuppance, and this is, Satan's radio station. But what is he getting his comeuppance for? I guess he had an affair, which is bad, and the woman committed suicide.
He had an affair, and the affair drove the woman to suicide, which he purported would have happened anyway because she was depressed.
Right.
But who knows? And he lied to his best friend / agent about it.
Right.
So I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like EC Comics-ish.
Yeah.
He was a bad dude, so he deserved some sort of punishment. It wasn't that great.
It's kind of weird because, so it's called Flip Side of Satan, and you hear all this satanic stuff. So clearly, the devil is doing this, but he's not exactly in hell. The devil kills him,
right?
Which is sort of weird. The devil doesn't normally just straight up cap people, does he? Usually.
Well, that's why I said, was he possessed?
Okay, I see what
and
you're
he
saying.
grabbed the stuff, because I think The Exorcist doesn't have. Well, I mean, the end of The Exorcist, the guy gets possessed and he throws himself down the stairs, but he does it to kill the demon.
Nice spoiler,
or,
but yeah.
Sorry, folks who haven't watched The Exorcist.
I'm very tickled by the concept of the devil just this elaborate here's a contract for your soul, and then just pulling out a gun and shooting the person. It's just the devil just straight up killing people. It's just weird. It's a weird concept.
Well, it's funny. I actually was reading something. I don't know where I read this, but it was talking about the devil. And when you think about the devil punishing bad people,
right,
it's kind of weird in as much as
the devil wants people to be bad.
It calls to human sense of our basic sense of justice. In a just world, you think maybe not death, but you want to punish a wrongdoer.
Right.
Or you feel like a wrongdoer deserves punishment, and so to have the devil be the vessel through which it happens is kind of odd. It seems like he's doing what should happen, but classically you think the devil's kind of a mischief maker or doing bad things. They should be encouraging JJ. So I don't know. It's all whatevs.
But also the devil generally does tempt people to do the bad thing in the first place, right?
Right.
That's the kind of more of
he shouldn't be delivering comeuppance for him. He should be about him a pat on the back.
Right, exactly. That's the end of that. I think we've talked for 6 hours about
I will say, Fred, I've threatened or mentioned a couple times George Romero had his hand in an anthology TV series that was it predated Tales from the Crypt, but it was very much a low rent Tales from the Crypt called Tales from the Dark Side.
Right.
There is an episode that is extraordinarily similar
Okay.
to this.
All right.
It involves a DJ
Okay.
who has to do battle with the devil,
Right.
a radio DJ locked in a room.
I think we've
And-
watched this together. I think we watched this together in college. It's pretty bad. If I recall correctly.
We may have, because it's also infamous because Ben Stiller,
Right.
for
Yes.
the
Yeah.
youngins out there
Yeah.
who might not remember, before he became a movie star, he had, among other things, he had a short-lived sketch show, and he did a sketch that parodied
Right.
this episode because his dad was the actor on that episode,
Oh,
so it was
right.
like
Yeah.
made a mark on him.
Yeah.
And the parody is hilarious.
Yeah.
The episode is very, very so-so.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe if next episode we do is 7 months from now for Halloween, maybe that's what we'll do a Tales from the Dark Side.
Cool.
What we doing next?
Bios and trivia. Bios and trivia. Bios and trivia. Yeah. Scott, Siegfried, Mark Grams Jr., Siegfried and Grams, and IMDB.
All right, so this is a little unusual, but we're doing things a little unusually tonight. So I'm going to do this kind of in reverse chronological, since we were most recently talking about Flip Side of the Devil.
Flip Side of Satan.
Art Johnson was Flip Side of Satan. I'm sorry. Was Art Johnson played J.J. Wilson. He was most famous as like a utility player on Laugh-In. So yeah, he was like the David Spade of Laugh-In, and whatever. I'm sure he's a lovely human being. I don't mean to be so dismissive of him. He was written by Malcolm Marmerstein. And Gerald Sanford, story by Hal Dressner. You need a lot of cooks in the kitchen for this one.
Did there have to be
this one went to the WGA. There were a fierce battle for credit.
Exactly. Is there really a story credit in addition to a writing credit? Jesus.
Directed by Gerald Friedman, who apparently in his later days has written a series of courtroom novels under the name J.F. Friedman. So interesting to check out. I don't know.
Cool.
Moving back, I don't have any trivia for it. Moving back, with apologies to Mr. Hyde, Adam West played Mr. Hyde. He's most famous for the Batman 60s show. He had a longer career, but unfortunately that's kind of what he became best known for. Everything I've ever heard, I think he was a lovely person. Jack Laird, who was heavily involved in the production creation of the Night Gallery, played the lab assistant. Written by him, directed by Jeanette Zwark, who did a bunch of Night Gallery episodes. We saw him in the Caterpillar. And then moving further back to what's it called again?
Since Ada came to stay.
It came to stay. A little bit of trivia.
Yeah.
The lead actor who played Craig and the lead actress who played his wife Joanna were actually married in real life at the time this was filmed. So
it's one of those things where it's like that little bit of chemistry meant absolutely nothing for the episode.
Didn't see it on the
totally irrelevant, and even if it had been particularly steamy between them, it would not have mattered. Apparently, green carnation, which is like it's an actual flower. It's kind of rare and weird. But apparently there's like a very strong connection to Oscar Wilde. Like when you Google it, it's like one of the first things that comes up because he chose it as like the sort of the emblem of his theater company. So he wore one in his lapel, and he had all his actors wear them in their lapels. And somebody wrote kind of like a parody novel about Oscar Wilde called The Green Carnation. And so it sort of became like a weirdly like a symbol of like sort of not really closeted homosexuality, but basically gay people would wear it to like identify themselves as gay in certain contexts. And like if you Google it now, there's just a lot of stuff about that history, and it's weird. Like I was wondering, well, maybe the guy who wrote it was gay and knew this or something, but I don't think that's the case. I think it's just a weird little thing, but it's not really associated with witchcraft or black magic at all. It's mostly just this weird Oscar Wilde thing.
Even if the author wasn't gay, I mean, he might have
known about it
in the theater world and just known of it. I mean, I was not familiar with that, but James Ferrantino played Craig Lowell. Dark stuff, but he was charged with stalking Tina Sinatra.
Cool.
So,
great.
After a long down, according to IMDb, after a long down period, he received rave reviews on the LA stage, playing a Russ Meyer-like porn producer in Boy Gets Girl.
Okay.
His quotes say, I got a resume that could choke a horse. I'm impressed by it. Producers who are casting people, they're all in their 20s now. You show it to somebody in the motion picture industry or television, they don't know and they don't care. So he's a neat guy.
Sounds great.
Michelle Lee played Joanna Lowell. She was in 300-plus episodes of the television show Knots Landing as Karen McKenzie.
Oh.
I have not seen a single episode. I know the name Knots Landing. I know nothing about it. I didn't know it ran for 300-plus episodes, but some people might know that and be tickled to know. Jonathan Harris played Professor Porteous. He was in the Twilight Zone episodes The Silence and 22,
right?
Most famously.
Oh, right, The Silence. I read about that. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, Jeanette Nolan played Aunt Ada. She was actually in 2 episodes too. Fred, do you remember where we saw her? Can you guess?
I'm gonna guess she was in Jezebel. Was she the witch in Jezebel?
Boom! That's one. Here, let me hit the stupid sound she made when she did, like, when she disapparated. All right.
Okay. Is she in The Hunt? Whoa! Nice.
2 for 2. Very
Well,
impressive.
there was just the first 2 old ladies I can think of. I don't know. Cool.
And the one other old lady, Alma Platt, was the housekeeper.
There was a housekeeper? I didn't even remember that character.
Apparently there was.
Okay.
And she was in a Twilight Zone episode that featured old people. Can you guess what it is?
Trade-ins. No, yeah, trade-ins. Oh, boom! I kind of second-guessed myself there. I was going to do God, it's so embarrassing how we can't remember any of these titles. I was going to say Kick the Can, but I'm glad I got trade-ins in there first. Cool.
You got it.
Boom. I'm pretty cocky right now.
Okay. So written by, I'm sure Martin Grams is listening to this.
Exactly.
Like, good job, Fred. Only took you 20 minutes.
Yeah. True.
Written by Alvin Sapinsley, I believe based on a story by A. Van Vogt. Yeah. Directed by
my trivia is
William
about
Hale.
him. Sorry, I'll just jump in. This very quick.
Oh yeah, please.
This is not a big deal, but I was googling these people to try and find out if any of them had been gay, and like obviously you can't just.
Is that like part of our mission now,
Yes.
just to out people?
Right? Yeah. I was just curious in case it was a connection to the Oscar Wilde thing. You know, they were all married. That doesn't necessarily prove anything, but just throwing it out there. But I was googling around A. Van Vogt, and he was like really involved in Dianetics very early on, like the pre-Scientology thing, because he was like a science fiction writer along with L. Ron Hubbard, and so just kind of in at the very, very early stages of a very strange thing. Anyway,
I don't know if we've ever talked about this. I've always been scared to read any Ayn Rand or any L. Ron Hubbard books, just because I'm very worried that I'd be like, that's a good point.
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't worry too much. I mean, I haven't read Dianetics, but I've read The Fountainhead, and I don't know. I don't think they're going to be. Let's keep going.
Directed by William Hale. He did a lot of television and a couple other night galleries.
Were there any MST3K connects?
Of course there was, Fred. There was an obvious MST3K connect. Let me hit it.
Inevitable.
So we like to find apparently obvious connections to Mystery Science Theater 3000 and whatever it is we're watching, and John has a very obvious one that I didn't get, so...
Oh, see, I thought you were just trying to like nudge me to remember to point it out or to do the bit. You didn't get this one?
Well, I don't know.
Oh man, this is like one of my top 20 episodes, and it is like
top 20 episodes. No, I don't.
Maybe
know.
top 10. I mean, I don't know if I'm being extreme. Definitely top 20. Maybe top 10.
Okay, give me a clue. I feel like I got all those zings with the old people in the Twilight.
I feel like if I give you any clue, well, I don't. Maybe you're just not familiar with the episode.
Okay.
So I'll just throw it out there. So it's a 6-season episode called Zombie Nightmare.
Oh, I don't know that one. I don't know that one.
Oh, it's a great episode.
Okay.
You gotta check it out.
Okay.
Starring Mr. Adam West.
Oh, okay. There you go. Perfect.
And Adam West even went so far as to record some bits for Turkey Day one year.
Yeah, no.
How do you know that? But not.
I just remember those bits. I remember those little bits. But I've seen Zombie Nightmare just like a long, long time ago. like certain episodes just get in your rotation. That one just never made it in mine. But anyway.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right.
So what about ratings?
So IMDb gives this episode, this collection of stories of the macabre, a 7.4.
Cool. I mean,
so who knows what the baseline for Night Gallery is, but
it's hard to rate all of them together. I feel like rating Night Gallery is just kind of silly, Like, it felt a lot more legitimate when we were doing the Twilight Zone. They all kind of feel like silly and stupid and kind of fun to me, Like,
yeah.
Since On Ada Came to Stay was kind of fun and had some good little bits in it, I enjoyed it. Apologies to Mr. Hyde barely, hit, registered with me. And then the DJ one was just goofy and stupid. I would say, like, it's a 4 or 3 or 5, but it's like, it just feels silly. What about you?
Yeah, I just was kind of scanning through IMDb, and it looks like for all the episodes, nothing ever hit a 9.
Yeah.
And we're talking about the internet where, like, this all gets... There's a lot of grade inflation that happens here. As we discussed with Twilight Zone, I think the highest episode ever... I'm just double-checking my math here. I think got an 8.3, and then apparently there were some episodes bad enough to get down to, like, the 5.0 area. But I don't know. It's like... Yeah, what are you going to say?
Yeah.
But, like... Since On Ada Came to Stay, I actually think was like a decent the concept was good.
Yeah.
Like, you got a guy who's deeply rooted in the rational and the logical and, and he's got to confront the supernatural. Okay, that's fine. And, a witch and he's got to do battle and the Carnation. Like, there are ways this story, if written and directed better, could have been decent.
And they're like
could have been like a solid 7 or 8, but
Yeah.
it's just not.
Yeah.
I think the execution is very poor throughout. So I don't know.
There are a couple little good filmmaking moments. I think you're being a little too harsh, but I do think the end is like definitely bungled and
right.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like a 3 or it's a 4. It's a 4.
Maybe I'd be generous and give it a 4. And the middle thing is like, come on.
Yeah.
It's like what am I even supposed to do with that? It's like a throat clear to get to the next thing, and the next thing really just stinks.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not trying to be rude, but it's bad.
I'm not trying to be
so,
rude. Opening line of like a New York Times book review. I'm not trying to be rude. Yeah.
I mean, like, people worked hard. I'm sorry. But he didn't do good work.
Yeah, okay, yeah. It's bad. It's like a 3
so
or a 2, yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, the overall thing, put it at, maybe being generous, the overall episode I'll say is like a 3. It's not very good.
All right.
So
a helping of sub 5 reviews on this particular episode of the Night Gallery. That about wraps it up for Since On Ada Came to Stay, with apologies to Mr. Hyde and The Flip Side of Satan. There was a lot of excess in titling in the Night Gallery. It was the 70s. It was a time of excess. But that wraps it up. Next fiscal quarter, we'll be doing another episode of some kind. There's lots of ways to get in touch with us and suggest things. John, why don't you give them the rundown?
All right, so the best way if you want to give us a suggestion is to send us an email at twilightpwn@gmail.com, Pwn spelled Pwn. You can, if you just want to reach out to us and say, hey, we're at on Twitter at Twilight Pwn. You can check out our website, twilightpwn.tumblr.com. You can check us out on Facebook, I don't know, on Facebook.
Yeah.
Twilight Pwn Facebook.
Twilight Pwn
I haven't
Facebook.
done this in a while.
Yeah.
Click on the Facebook thing. I don't know. You can subscribe to us in any podcatcher app. If you go onto iTunes and leave us a rating or review, we really appreciate those. So to that end, could I give a little thank you to Plastic and Ricky Bells for your very nice reviews. I do recall it was a little while ago now because we've been so spread out in our recording, but Plastics, shout out to my blanket fort, did make me snort. So.
Cool. Yeah, thank you, Plastic. All right, well, we've been talking for a long, long time, so I'll just
all right.
I'll bid you adieu, and I can't wait to find out more of your weird peculiarities next time we talk, John.
All right, talk to you later, Fred.
All right, bye now.